Welcome to Wednesday night Bible study here at In the Spirit Christian Church, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the place where the Spirit of the Lord is. And because the Spirit of the Lord is here, there is liberty. Well, before I begin with tonight's lesson, I want to make a brief announcement by letting you know that in-person Bible study will start once again April the 20th, 2022 at 7 o'clock p.m. So if you're in the Tulsa area, come on out, join in with us. But if not, you can continue to find us online, the church website, inthespiritcc.org, the church's YouTube channel, or you're welcome to go to the church Facebook group page and find us there. Now, let's get into tonight's lesson. It comes from the book of Job. And many of you may know the story about Job, but I want to just give you a brief paraphrase, if I may. What we do know about Job is that Job, yes, was a real person. He's referred to in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14, and again in the book of James, chapter 5. Job was a Gentile. He was thought to have been a descendant of Nahor, who was the brother of Abraham, the father of many nations. But what we know is that he knew God by the name Shaddai, meaning the Almighty. Often we hear about El Shaddai, God Almighty. But in this Bible story about Job, we see that Job was a wealthy man. He resided in a place called Oz. He had an extended family and a vast number of flocks. He was considered to be a man who was blameless and upright. In other words, he lived right. He was often and constantly mindful of how he lived and desired to live a righteous way. Matter of fact, the Bible tells us that God even brags about Job to Satan, that accuser, that force or that is contrary to God. God brags about Job and about Job's virtue. But here's what Satan does. Satan contends that Job is only righteous because God has favored him, has given him great wealth. God has given him liberally, generously. And what Satan does is he dares God that says that if I get the approval to afflict or inflict suffering upon Job, he will not only not be upright and blameless, but he will change and then curse you. So what does God do? God allows or permits Satan to test Job. But one thing he says now, you cannot take his life in any way, any form. You can test him, you can put trials upon him, but you cannot take his life. So what happens? In a course of one day, Job is given 4 different reports, each report informing him that his sheep, his servant, his children have all died because of intruders, thieves, or natural disasters. Job rips up his clothes, shaves his head in sorrow, but yet he still praises God in his prayers. Satan makes his way up to heaven and God allows him another opportunity to test Job. But this time, Job is so distressed. Matter of fact, he attacks Job's body, gives him terrible skin sores. His wife then urges him to denounce, just curse God, give up and die. But Job, in protest, tries to endure his afflictions. Later on, 3 of Job's close friends come to comfort him after hearing about his troubles. They sit with Job in silence for 7 days, probably not knowing what to say, but also out of reverence for his grieving. But then on that 7th day, Job talks. starting a discussion with his friends, and then each one of them share in his reflection of Job's troubles in poetic descriptions. Job, so afflicted, he damns the day that he was born, relating life and death to both light and darkness. He hopes that his birth had not been obscured by darkness and desires or wants to never have been born again, believing that his life is only increased by his suffering. One of his friends, well meaning, replies to Job and tries to come as he has tried to comfort other people. And he recognizes that he's never experienced the type of pain that Job is going through, so he cannot really understand, but he offers his sympathy. Another friend concludes that Job's pain must be due to some type of sin that Job has committed, and recommends that Job seek God's favor by repenting. Two of the friends agree that Job must have performed some type of evil deed in order that God would be so provoked against Job to allow these things to come on him. And they ask or suppose that even Job's children may have even brought their deaths upon themselves because of some bad behavior. Even worse, one of the friends suggests that whatever wrongdoing Job has done, he likely deserves it, and that his suffering could be even more than what he's experiencing right now because he's not getting what he deserves. He's not getting the punishment that he adequately deserves, so he ought to be glad that it's not worse than what it is. Have you ever had some friends do that to you? But yet Job reacts and offers these remarks. And even though he's angry with his sympathizers, he comes back and says that they are worthless physicians who whitewash their help with lies. But Job goes on and he questions why God judges people by their deeds anyway. If God is so easily changed or can easily forgive their behavior, why does God judge them so harshly? Job goes on to ask, truly, can God satisfy justice in such a way by causing human suffering? And acknowledges that God is still mysterious and beyond human comprehension. He furthermore goes on and talks about we as humans in our finite thinking and being cannot possibly be able to convince God with words or adequately defend our case to ease God. And Job wants desperately for someone to come and mediate between him and God. Or if there's no mediator, just send me to the dark place. Send me to hell if that's the case. In other words, relieve me of my misery. But Job believes that there has to be a witness. There has to be a redeemer who could testify of his integrity. And that the suffering that he's experienced is too much. He turns bitter, anxiousness, and scared. He deplores injustice, that God would let evil people thrive while there's so many honest people who suffer. Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever experienced why does evil seem to go without punishment, but yet those who try to live right seem to suffer, to do without? And Job wants to go and face God and protest. I don't know about you, but there's been some times that I've gone through some stuff that I wanted to go before God and present my case and protest before God. But not being able to physically to go before God, He assumes that wisdom is concealed by humans, and he decides to persevere by seeking wisdom in fearing God and continuously trying to evade evil. But yet God eventually does intervene. And he commands Job, Job, be brave, and explains with great detail the features of his creation. Job, overcome by the appearance of God, recognizes that God is infinite in power and accepts the constraints that he has in his human understanding. This response of Job pleases God, even though God still is a little upset with the friends for emitting, or if you will, or offering lousy advice to Job. And Job reconciles with God on their behalf, on his friends' behalf. And what does God do? God is faithful to forgive. God then restores Job's health, granting him twice as much as he had before, more property, more children, and a long life. And in the end, Job never completely gave up hope or faith in God. Well, what does this tell us? First of all, whatever you're going through, whatever trial, whatever test you're going through, persevere and don't give up. Don't give up hope. Don't give up faith in God, because God is going to give you double for your trouble. Tell somebody, God is going to give me double for my trouble. I don't know what you're going through, but I proclaim to you by faith that yes, God is going to give you double for your trouble. Another thing you got to recognize, whatever situation you're going through, whatever trial that you're going to, it is just a test. Some of you may be as old as I am, and I remember growing up, and at a certain time at night, the television screen would go dark. And then the broadcaster would come on and say, don't be alarmed, that this is just a test. Well, this is my declaration to you, my sisters and my brothers. Whatever you're going through, it is just a test. And God is going to give you double for your trouble. But let me tell you about some tests, trials that people go to. First of all, let's look at Job. He had 3 reports. First of all, he was attacked, and all of his oxen and donkey were either stolen or killed, along with a portion of his servants killed. Later on, fire falls down from the sky and burns up his sheep, and more of Job's servants are killed. He's attacked by the Chaldeans, and they steal Job's camels, killing even more of his servants. Later on, a mighty wind sweeps in from the desert, destroys his house, where all of his children were gathered for a feast, killing off all of his children. I'm talking about some stuff happened to Job. But if that wasn't enough, the enemy afflicts Job with painful sores. He couldn't kill him. So he afflicted him so much that it made Job want to just die. Sores on the bottom of his feet, on the top of his head. But let me say this to you, my sisters and my brothers. The Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10, says it so perfectly. The thief, the enemy, the adversary, the opponent, the hater, the accuser, the one who resists, the one who obstructs, the one who hinders whatever is good. I'm talking about Satan. Comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But like Job, we are called to withstand. So what lessons can we learn from Job? First of all, the enemy comes to steal, comes to take from you what God has used to bless you. He was attacked, stole his oxen, his donkeys, his camels, his children died. Come on. Comes to steal, just stole his stuff. The enemy comes to kill. Can't get you? The enemy, the adversary, will come and attack what's close to you. What was close to Job? His children. So he attacked his children, killed them. Fire fell down from the sky, burned up his sheep, and even more of his servants comes to kill. And matter of fact, when the Chaldeans attacked, not only did they steal more of Job's cattle, but it killed more of his servants. So not only does the enemy comes to steal and kill, but the enemy also comes to destroy. The enemy afflicted Job with painful sores from the top of his head and the bottoms of his feet. Tell somebody, when you go through some stuff, we look like one, and we look a mess. When you go through stuff, sometimes people just look a mess. They just like, oh Lord, how do I have to go through this? How come I got to go through this? Why do I have to, the sickness and disease have to come up on my body? I've been living upright before you. And matter of fact, when we go through stuff, we look for the one who is closest to us to not only understand, but also to be able to confide, to be with us. And in the case of Job, he was married and his wife was still with him. And many of us have taken marriage vows, and marriage vows, they say, for better or for worse, which means you're supposed to stick together in the good times and, yes, the bad times. Because in life, you're going to have some rainbows, but there are also going to be some storms. Storms will come and bring many challenges your way. And it's in the good times you can love one another. But can you love in the bad times too? But marriage vows go beyond rich for better and or for worse, but they also talk about for richer or for poor. Why? Because you can have stuff one day and be totally broke the next day. You can be totally without. The next day your money could be gone, your servants can be gone, your house could be gone. Now, to Job's wife's credit, she didn't leave him. She didn't abandon him. But she does tell him, Job, why don't you curse God and die? Now, perhaps she tells him this because she doesn't want to see him suffer. I mean, what loving spouse would want to see their spouse suffer? We don't really know why she told him that. Only God knows her heart. Only God knows the heart of a person. Now, for me, I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about nobody else. I need somebody who's going to be with me no matter what. Somebody who's going to encourage me. Somebody who's going to be my cheerleader. Somebody who's going to tell me, baby, I know it looks bad right now, but don't you give up. Don't you throw in the towel. Hang in there, because change is coming. But instead, Job's wife tells him, curse God and die. Well, maybe you can't get encouragement or understanding from a spouse. So we look to our friends. So what happens when the closest don't understand and your friends show up? Because they hear about the unthinkable calamities that come your way, and they come thinking they're comforting you, but they don't know really what to say, and what they do say offers no help. Because they're not understanding. They haven't gone through what Job is going through. They don't understand what he's going, and they don't understand Job's faith in God. But instead of offering comfort, they began to come up with reasons why he is experiencing what he's experiencing. Is it because you sinned? But yet we know that Job feared God. He shunned evil. Too often when friends see you going through, when they see you're suffering, when they see you're having trials or troubles, when they see that you're uncovered and see your nakedness, they want to judge you. Anybody have some friends like that? You don't talk to them unless they hear something going on and they want to call you on the phone. They want to gossip about what's happening. They want to discuss the latest news in the church. Who did it? How come? What do you think about it? If the problem came, it must have been something that somebody did wrong or something that you did wrong. When something's going down, they want to show up, not to help, but to find out the deep and the dirty. You know what I mean? But then there's other friends. You may not talk to them on the phone at all. But when something goes down, they show up and you can depend on them. I've got such a friend and I'm grateful. They're not judging you. They're not trying to say, well, it's your fault. They are just there to provide comfort and to listen. All of us should have those kind of friends. Or we should also be those kind of friends too. But in Job's curse, he turns to his friend with energy that matches the attacks of them accusing him, and he maintains his innocence and wisdom while including himself among those who are morally corrupt. Because the Bible talks about the fact that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, no matter how good we try to be. But he tells them that he knows as much as they know, and that whatever they're teaching, whatever they're saying is not false, because he understands the heart of a loving God. And more so, he affirms his faith in God. But he makes two requests of God. And his two requests of God is, God, don't withdraw from me. Hey, when you're going through something and it feels like you have no help, all you can do is just say, Lord, don't withdraw from me. Matter of fact, I like to say, Lord, put your arms around me. If you just hold me close, I'll make it through. But the other request that Job has is that God not cause him to be overcome with fear. Fear is that acronym, false evidence that appears real. Don't let me be overcome with false evidence that appears real in my circumstances. Now, God shows up. And God has a way of showing up just in the nick of time. And God gets in a conversation with Job, or Job gets in a conversation with God, because a conversation is a two-way. When you're in communion, common union, God talks to Job, Job talks to God. They're in a conversation. And it's in these times of difficulty that we're called to draw closer to God, to spend more time with God, to be in conversation with God like Job. I like the song that Yolanda Adams sings, Open My Heart. And the lyrics to the song says, alone in a room, it's just me and you. I feel so lost because I don't know what to do. Now, if I choose the wrong thing to do, I'm so afraid of disappointing you. So I need to talk to you and ask you for your guidance, especially today when the world seems so cloudy. When we're going through, we don't pull away from God. We draw closer to God. It's the time that we have to get alone with God. I mean, friends can't do it, spouse can't do it, children can't do it. Outside, be the pastor, the preacher, the bishop, the apostle can't do it. There's times when you just have to spend your time with God and have a conversation with God. Just you and God. When you feel lost, when you feel alone and you don't know what to do, like the song says, you don't want to do the wrong thing because you don't want to disappoint God. So have a conversation with God and get God's guidance on what to do. Like Job. In Job's conversation with God, he's reminded of the deity of God, that God is God and God all by himself. In Job's conversation with God, he's reminded of God's authority, that the enemy is not running nothing, and yes, God is still in control. In Job's conversation with God, Job is reminded of God's eternity, that God is from everlasting to everlasting. And in Job's conversation with God, he's reminded that God has all power over all of creation. God has all wisdom, and God is omnipresent at all places at all times. And God is all understanding, and God is supreme. So you spend some time talking with God, and God will reveal some stuff to you. Job's response to the character of God is that I know that you can do all things and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. It can't be aborted. It can't be changed because God has a plan and a purpose. Matter of fact, if we look back and say God has a plan and a purpose for our lives, plan to prosper us, plans for us to be in good health. Come on. God's plans cannot be changed. We can get on detours. Stuff can happen along the way, but God's plans does not change. God's purposes for our lives do not change. We get to verse 3, it says that who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have declared that which I do not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I do not know. Job 42, verse 3. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have declared that which I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I do not know. In other words, like Paul Harvey said the American radio commentator and news columnist from the early 60s when I was growing up. He's known for this catchphrase, and now here is the rest of the story. John 10:10 says this, I've come that they may have life. Now we know that the text said, first part of that verse said, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But the rest of the text, the rest of the story says, I have come that you might have life and that you may have it more abundantly. The enemy took, stole, killed. But God reminds us that God sent Jesus that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And because of God's promises and God's purpose, after Job was blessed by the remainder or the reminder of God's character, he was further blessed as the Lord restored him of his fortune, gave him twice as much as he had before. Come on, you need to tell yourself, after all the hell that I've been through, after all the troubles, after all the trials, after all the tests that I've gone through, God is going to restore. And matter of fact, not only is God going to restore, but God is going to give you double for your trouble. But let me give you the biblical definition or the meaning of the word restoration. It means to give back, to receive back more than what was lost, to the point where the final state is greater than the original state. Tell somebody that's good news. The point is, or the main point is that someone or something is improved beyond measure. I'm talking about God wants to restore back to you whatever you lost. Whatever trial you've gone through, whatever trouble you've gone through, God wants to restore back to you and give you double for your trouble, more than what you lost. Everything that the enemy has stolen, God is getting ready to give you your stuff back. Not just your possessions, but to give you your peace back. Peace beyond understanding, and the understanding beyond all peace. God is getting ready to give you your joy back. Someone said, I lost my joy. I was going through so much. I lost my joy. God's going to give you your joy back. Happiness. The world can't make you happy. But our happiness comes from none other but from God. Everything that the enemy has tried to kill you with in your life, get ready to be restored back. Get ready for it to be restored back into your life. Relationships, marriages, children, family, whatever the enemy stole, get ready for it to be restored back to your life. Everything that the enemy tried to destroy in your life, attack your health, attack your wealth, take you out, God is writing you back in. When the enemy tried to write you out, God is writing you back in. Oh, I'm getting ready to close right now, but I need you to proclaim by faith that I'm getting ready. Come on, you can say it with me. I'm getting ready to get double for my trouble. May God bless you and keep you, and I'll see you back here next week.